Hello, and welcome to The Black Unconscious,
a mental health podcast about living, coping, and thriving while Black.
I'm Raquel Martin, a PhD candidate in medical and clinical psychology.
And I'm Dr. Justin Hopkins, a licensed clinical psychologist.
This podcast is not meant to be a substitute for a therapeutic relationship with a licensed therapist.
Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the show. Hey everyone, and welcome to The Black Unconscious. I am Dr. Justin Hopkins.
And I am Raquel Martin.
This is episode 3, and today we'll be talking about token blackness and the white gaze.
Yeah, so one, the title is awesome. Justin came up with it. I was so excited about it. But it came about because I actually just started internship. This was my first week, and I am at Johns Hopkins Hospital, specifically Kennedy Krieger, working with children. And we have a class of 33 students. And there is myself, in terms of minorities, one other African-American female, and one Asian female. Mm-hmm. And I just, like, as soon as I walked into the room, I just remember feeling just so, like, put off by that. Just because it is Hopkins, it's in Baltimore, so you can imagine, you know, the kids that we're seeing. And also, there were no minority clinicians in the clinics that I saw. So
right.
I was like, let's talk about this, because this is, you know, we talked about representation in the last episode and how people, you know, especially kids probably are more comfortable with people that look like them. So that just really bugged me.
Yeah.
A lot.
Well, I think also, like we, as Black people, we often find ourselves in spaces where we are the only, where we're surrounded by people who absolutely do not look like us. And we're viewed as a representation of other people that do look like us, our entire community, the entire Black community. And that bears a certain psychological weight. It certainly impacts us in a number of different ways. And we want to kind of like break that down and dissect that. And so one of the terms, like token blackness, I mean, we all know what that is, right? Just being like token or one of few in a space. Yeah,
even on South Park, the TV show, the Black kid's name was Token.
Yeah,
like, when I walked into the room for internship, I thought I was at the Oscars. Like, it was just insane. I was just like, well, what? It was just, and it just makes me like tighten up, to be honest. Like, I automatically tighten up when that happens.
Well, I mean, that also captures the dearth of like Black professionals in mental health. It also, in many ways, I think captures what we're talking about in terms of the impact of the white gaze, because it's like, I think for many people, if you're picking a professional white collar type of or a high education type of career path, then the chances are that the higher you go, the more likely that you will see less and less and less Black people in your space.
And then not even just professions, though. Like, if I go to certain areas where I'm at, like I used to be in Rockville, Maryland, but like Bethesda, there's not many people that look like me. Or even like certain restaurants. Like, I feel like everyone has had that moment where they walked into a space,
right,
and you just been like, okay, let me count how many people look like me.
Right. And then you're right, just to see like, well, what kind of environment am I in? And then you read, like, you get all these clues about like how you should be behaving in light of the people that are around you. And so when we talk about the white gaze, like gaze in particular, right, and that is like, some psychological theorists have talked about gaze. Like, there's this guy named Lacan, psychodynamic therapist. Shout out to my style of therapy. Which
I do really feel like I'm more CBT.
Fantastic.
But my psychologist is psychodynamic, and psychodynamic works with me in therapy. So
okay.
You know.
So there's some appreciation for it.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't do it. It's just you know, I've been trained more in CBT, but I've learned that, like, my psychologist is clearly, I'm pretty sure she's psychodynamic, and it works for me during sessions.
You enjoy it. Yeah. So Lacan, what he talks about is, like, first of all, like, a gaze obviously is someone viewing you, but there's like this evaluative part of it, right? And so he talks about the person who experiences the gaze often experiences this anxious state that comes from the awareness of being viewed. I mean, that part is obvious. I mean, when someone's evaluating you, you'll be anxious. But he goes on to say, like, because all humans to some degree naturally compare themselves to others, the person who's being watched loses a degree of autonomy upon realizing that he or she is being observed or watched. And so it's like code switching, essentially, for example, right? I think when we walk in different environments, we naturally, like, I mean, our voice changes, our behavior changes, our style of dress changes. And I think that's normal for most people, right? Like, no matter where you go, you try to adapt a little bit to your environment. But there's a sense, I think, for a lot of Black folks in white spaces, there's a sense that you have to disregard what comes natural in your presentation and alter some of your culturally specific instincts and tendencies in order to make sure that you're presenting yourself to white people in a way that's pleasing to them.
I mean, but yeah, and then not even, I mean, the world is a white space. I mean, at least America, where I'm at. So, I mean, we can think about it specifically in terms of like work and stuff like that, but everywhere. And I think I've gotten better at, like, I used to code switch even more, but the older I get, the more I'm like, oh, it's a no for me, bro. So like, I mean, I try to, you know, get better at it at work, but sometimes it's like, if I'm too tired, I'm too tired to code switch. Like I was in a meeting and I told one of my coworkers, like, if this meeting doesn't end, you're going to catch these hands. And she was like, what? And I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot. I'm sorry. I was just so tired. And I'm so hungry. And we were in a meeting about a patient. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, they kept talking in circles. And I was like, well, it seems like we just going to have to take an L on that one, right? Like, this is not going to work. Right. And they're just like, take an L. And I'm like, it seems like we're just going to have to, you know, take the loss on that, because I just don't think that's going to be beneficial for the patient. But it's really like, move on.
But, you know, I think like things like that are actually really useful, because like we need, like, I think it's often up to us to kind of like push like push the criteria a little bit towards being a little bit more favorable for both sides, not just for the white superior at work or the white colleague at work or the white person that's over at the space next to you at a coffee shop. But for us to be able to like
Starbucks, just being from Philly, like
I'm a Dunkin' Donuts man myself, being from Queens. So Dunkin' Donuts had New York on lock for a really, really long time. But I think it is really important for us to find ways to be more naturally ourselves, to be unapologetically Black. I love that phrase.
I hate that phrase.
Really?
Dude, I like what? I don't know when it started, but when it first came out.
So tell me,
I didn't get the term.
Really?
First
so
of all.
What's your beef with the term?
What's the part? What do you mean unapologetic? Like, is it meant to say that we are so used to sublimating our Blackness that we get to a space where if we act the way we want to act, we feel like we have to apologize for it? Like, I don't understand the concept.
Well, I think for me, it is a little bit of that, right? Like, I think like for me, when I think about like the white gaze and like being in spaces where I'm like the only Black person or one of like very few, I think for a lot of people, you do become a little bit more self-conscious. For some people, depending on your experiences, you don't feel as safe because you've had some like messed up experiences. So you change your behavior in order to feel a little bit more comfortable.
So it's like changing your behavior is an example of an apology
because you're not as much of yourself. Whether that means changing, and I'm not talking about large behaviors, right? There are obviously certain things that we should be doing for the general stability and safety of the public. I'm not talking about like doing anything that's like against any sort of law or any sort of like social constructs that keep things in order. I'm talking about like little things, like making sure that we're not inconveniencing white people, like whether it be in terms of our space, our body space, or in terms of how we're speaking to them. The words that we use.
The big old Sambo smile that most people put on.
Exactly.
Honestly, I think...
And those are apologies in my... Right? Like, those are ways that we kind of... These very subtle ways that we are less and less of ourselves when we're in different spaces.
Right, because my skin is what you fear, right? So, like, the thing that comes out a lot is like everyone's like, oh, and police officer things basically. It's like, oh, we'll drop your weapon or something like that. And with Black people, you can't drop your weapon when my skin is what you fear. Like my skin
true.
is the weapon.
Yeah.
So like I can understand that aspect of it,
Right.
and like that. But I also think that like a lot of times I think especially when I was younger, like you can tell like when you looking at someone and they're not smiling, you may feel like it's more threatening. So
Right.
I will automatically smile,
Right.
honestly, around like certain
Yes.
people just to make
Right.
them feel more comfortable.
Right.
It ain't nothing funny. Like
Right.
there's not really to smile
Right.
about. But I
Right.
like just to be like, all right, well, just because I know. So yeah, like
Right,
I get that explanation makes sense.
So there's this performative gentleness and
Yeah.
this performative like tentativeness and like.
Because we don't want them to think we're a threat, right?
Exactly. We're trying to account for their fear of us in many of these situations, just to make them comfortable, so we don't get the cops called on us. And there's these little ways that I think we often shrink ourselves in order to be safe, in order to be viewed in a positive light, and that's
right. That's crazy though. Shouldn't I be scared? Shouldn't I be scared walking into this room? I know if I see somebody buying a bunch of tiki torches, my heart drops. If I see a bunch of disgruntled people with bowl cuts and some cargo
Right.
pants, I'm uncomfortable.
Right.
If I, like,
Right.
shouldn't I be uncomfortable? Like, I'm the only one that looks like me. You the group.
right. We're the ones that are fewer in number, and
I
also
should be afraid.
yes, right,
Okay.
right.
Like, so that. I've gotten better at like turning that off and or whatever, but when I was younger, I would always try to make people feel more comfortable, and then it takes energy, right? Like that's what it does to me. Like we
Yes,
always
it
try to
takes
tie stuff to the
energy. Yes.
the unconscious and like the stuff that we're internalizing. I would find that me hanging out with groups like they're primarily white groups and having to be on, I feel exhausted after that. And you're already exhausted from, some people get tired from socializing, but it was because I had to be on the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had to make sure
Yes, right.
not only be on my behavior, but I also wanted to be watchful of like the jokes. Like I want to like say some racist came on, I'm gonna watch to see who's laughing. Like I want to know if
Right,
you laughed at that
right.
joke, or say we listening to music.
Right.
I ain't playing rap music because if we saying the words together and you say it, like I have to be on
Right.
guard for not only for
Right,
me, but I
right.
need to watch you.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So for example, if you're if one of your colleagues, right, got in the car with you, and what's playing is an old like J album, right?
Yeah.
Like do you continue to play it, or do you turn it off? Because then like what is it that they what is it these questions like go through your mind? And I'm not saying everyone decides the same thing. What I am saying though is the questions I think do go through everyone's mind to some degree at some point or another.
Yeah,
right?
I remember.
So,
yeah.
So it's like, well, do I want them to know this part of me? Is it okay? Will they treat me in a more poor manner if they hear like some of the words coming through the speaker? Like, or another thought is like, will they say something while listening to this? Will they repeat a word that they shouldn't?
Do I need
Will
to
they
dot
say
your
something?
eye?
Right.
Because we got a problem now.
Right.
I had an instance where I was actually playing Kendrick Lamar, Good Kid, Mad City. One of the amazing album, lyrical genius, an actual album that's put together well. It ain't seem like it was a bunch of tracks that were centered around a single just so that we can get like the new kids on it. It was amazing. And he says the N-word a lot, which I actually do not say the N-word. I don't subscribe to that. And I remember being in a car with my friend, and he said the N-word, and she said, "Oh, he shouldn't say that word." And I remember thinking, y'all invented it. Like I was just sitting there like, and we're still cool. But I just remember thinking like, do I have the energy to try to am I going to use my energy to try to explain to why like you ain't really have to say that? But then it's also on me, because why ain't I just turn off the song, right? Like why didn't I just get rid of that part of myself for the 10-minute car ride? I feel like there's always a struggle between, or do you ever feel like there's a struggle between you see something racist happen, or you see some microaggression or something, and it's like, do I take my time to sit here and educate you, or do I, sacrifice my energy and my well-being, because it is going to eat away at you, like you do think about it.
Exactly,
so how do you decide when to be like, I'm gonna say something? And
I think part of the reason why that's such a hard call to make is that it's because of some of the things that you mentioned, right? Like what's at risk, right? Mm-hmm. Safety, judgment, perhaps like our like upward mobility, like moving on to the next job or getting positive reviews from other from whether it be your peers or your supervisors, like all or just feeling safe. I think I already mentioned. So like those are like big deals, you know. And I think with any social construct, like the levels of like power and privilege obviously play into them. And so when it comes to like white people's observation of black bodies, you know, there is always a much harsher view. There's always a much harsher evaluation than they would grant to our white counterparts.
Definitely. And I think it's important, you know, I'm sure like all listeners are like, you know, I'm in academia. So the higher up I go, the less people look like me, period.
Right.
Luckily, we posted something on Instagram about so many amazing psychologists and mental health clinicians that are African American. But I find, lately at least, I'm finding so many black counselors or black licensed clinical social workers. But psychologists, I'm not seeing as many, you know, and luckily Instagram has like connected me to all these amazing people, but I didn't know about any of this before, like the social media aspect.
Yeah.
And when I
the community that you
the
fell
community
into,
that we do have, you know,
via social media,
and then like a lot of people, I spoke to someone a female who is a black psychologist, and she said, well, PhD programs aren't really for us. Like doing those extra 5 to 7 years of low income, and it's harder to get, and that's not for us. You know, like you want to get a job that lets you do what you want to do, but you also want to, you know, work and earn stuff. So PhD is a longer route.
Right.
And we both came from HBCUs. Like I went to Fisk, he went to Hampton, and then we went to PWIs after that, which like
predominantly white institutions.
Institutions, and it's like such a stark contrast. And I think it, like Fisk changed so much. Just being around so many people who were in the pursuit of academic excellence, who like had all this self-love, black people from every single aspect. We had a lot of people from the islands and from Chicago at Fisk. So like you get that, and it's something we didn't really get to experience. So it's the contrast of having that and then going to the PWIs when I am the only black person. It's like I felt like I lost like the best part of my education aspect. Like I felt like I lost it.
There is such an, I'm even getting goosebumps as you're like talking about this, because I'm reflecting on both my time at Hampton and what I always hear like from people who have graduated from historically black universities, and that's that, you know, you get this experience where you are where you don't have to think about code switching
at all.
How you speak in the classroom is how you speak in the student center. How you speak in the student center is how you speak at the apartment with your friend's home.
There is no talking white. There is none of that, because like we all black and we all sound different anyway.
Yes.
You know, like it's just...
And we're allowed the freedom to sound however we naturally sound.
Yeah, you're allowed to be the black nerd. You're allowed to be not even a black nerd. You're allowed to just be a nerd, dude. You're allowed to just be someone who's...
Or a jock.
Yeah, or a jock. So you're allowed to like soccer or basketball. You're allowed to be in you know...
You can just do you.
You can just be you without having to worry about the implications of that. And, you know, there's nothing like that. And it's just, you know...
Not have to worry about like an
like
outsider.
That HBCU. I would agree. Like that sense.
You know, it gives you this experience of being the majority culture, and that's incredibly important because again, you're allowed the freedom to be as you naturally are in those multiple different environments where it is a more professional or academic sense on an internship or within the classroom, or whether it's a more laid-back sense. You know, the degree to which we change our behavior in these subtle ways is so much larger when we know white counterparts are around, and there could be some, for many of us, there could be some sort of like negative evaluative stance. And so
that gaze, white gaze.
Right.
Like
so
that we were talking about.
To not have that as a psychological burden is so... It's so incredibly healing in so many ways.
Yeah, and can we just, I mean, you know, I hope I'm, you know, it is the Black Unconscious, so I do really want to reach minority listeners, but I also want to reach other listeners too, and just to think about the fact that this is something that we actually go through. Like this is something we have to do. Think about just being at work, and not only do we have to be at work, but we have to be on. This sucks.
Right.
Like this is not. It sucks.
Right.
Like to have to think about how I'm portraying myself. Like whenever I had someone I spoke to, and they said if they felt like they were in danger, they would call the cops. And I just couldn't help but think, like, How unfair is that? Like, what does that feel like to feel like someone is actually there to protect you? Like, if I'm in danger, I'm going to call the cops, because that's not something I have. So like to just be able to wake up and just be like, I'm just going to be however I want to be today. What does that feel like?
Well,
because most of us don't have that.
Or even I think I mean, in today's days, like there are some white folks who are like calling the cops just because they're annoyed. Dude, or irritated.
When I tell you, we need to be dropping a fine on all them. Me and my friend, she every time we're like at the park and she's like, "Oh, I see one of these lone wolves out here. I'm about to call the cops to protect all of us, because because they're all lone wolves,
right? Not
terrorists,
right?
Lone wolves."
So there's the what was it? The little black girl who got the police called on her by a white woman who sold cannabis treats for dogs.
Yeah, the chick she was selling. She don't know more. And that's also, we need to hold these people accountable. You get some face recognition. We black Twitter, black Facebook, black Instagram, find them and track them down. They need to lose their jobs. But they want us to lose our lives. All they care about is money. Not all day. Yeah, and you know what? Let me not generalize.
Of course.
I'm only talking about racist people. All right, like who like to call the cops on people, and if they're acting that way, just.
Well, they need to be held accountable for their actions, because those sort of things, They mobilize these forces that are against us, or naturally scared of us, or treat us in ways that are unkind. And earlier, not unkind. That is way too gracious. They kill us.
They kill us
unfairly, and brutalize us and traumatize us, and in many cases scar us for life.
They take away mothers and daughters and fathers and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles. They take them from this earth.
Right.
Because you fear our skin.
Right. And so earlier I was saying like how like it's our white counterparts judge us so like look at us so much more harshly, right? There's the criteria for black folks is often so much harsher, right? But that's in like black homes, like, and you and I have talked about this, like there's a common mantra of what, like you have to be twice as good
to get half as far.
Michelle Obama even mentioned that in her speech.
You have to.
Right, in one of her speeches. Right.
But isn't there also
Yeah. What were you going to say?
I was going to say also the opposite, because I've also gotten like, you ever get like the black voice? You ever get like you talking to someone who's not black and they turn on that voice? Or they use that term like, "What's up, girl?" My name is Raquel. Like, like, have you ever gotten that from someone? Because I remember you mentioning, like, one time you said someone said they wanted to introduce you to someone. They're like, "Oh, you're going to love this guy. This guy's awesome." And then you met him and you're like, "He's racist."
Yeah.
And they didn't know because they weren't black, so they wouldn't even know. But they're like, "Oh, Justin's going to, he's going to love this guy." And then you interact with this guy and you were just like, "That dude's racist, dog." Like, but they wouldn't know because
it doesn't occur to them.
It doesn't occur to them.
Right. Racist in subtle ways that make, or if he's trying to like sound black just for me. Dude. Like sound how you naturally sound. Like I want to be able to sound like how I naturally sound, like all the time. Like everybody wants that, right?
And it's
Everyone
obvious when
freedom.
They do it, man.
Right.
That's not how you sound, because I heard how you talked when you talked to me, and I heard how you talked when you talk. And I don't know any specific names or whatever, but listen. So Apple is Gwyneth Paltrow's store. So I heard how you talk to me and how you talk to Apple or whatever, and it's not the same, and it's so insulting, and it honestly makes me feel
right.
And I don't want to say enraged, but I get real irritated with it, because it makes me feel like you had to either dumb something down. You had to feel like you had to speak my language for me to understand just a normal conversation for you. It makes me feel like you think I'm stupid. Like,
well, it's objectifying, right?
Yeah.
They treat you like a character instead of a person.
Yeah, I'm not well, my personality is huge, so yeah. But like, and then
you have character.
I have character. But
you're not a character.
You're not
an object. You're not a caricature.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what about and if you're just meeting someone for the first time, like that's not like in those scenarios, there's always this preconception of what you should or should not like, or how you should or should not be, and they're responding to whatever it is they think that you should be because of your skin. And
they're responding to who they think you are.
Right.
That's who they think you are.
I mean, the other way that happens is just like when we make mistakes, like it just echoes so much louder. Like going back to the Michelle Obama quote and that mantra, and that's not just like myth. Right, this is like scientific fact.
Yeah.
That black folks are more harshly judged. Like that's not.
Yeah, and then also just a FYI to all you awesome listeners out there. Anytime we talk about, we're gonna put this in the web, we're gonna put this up so people can read them, it's on the website.
Right.
So it's on www.theblack.unconscious. But like anytime, because if we say like, we're gonna just put that up, it's on the website. Just FYI. But yeah, no, it's, and we always add some kind of research article or articles because we. Are in the scientist practitioner model. So
it's like Raquel's an actual researcher who does actual research.
I try to do some of the researches, some of the things, reading all the books. But yeah, just so that you guys can also be knowledgeable of it. It's something that I think the best thing about the podcast is this is all stuff that you guys have experienced. Like all the listeners have experienced this, and you may not notice how much tension you're holding in your body, or how much energy you're putting into this whole code switching thing. Like how much it's really draining you. Like, yes, you're drained because you're at work all day, but you're also drained because you have to be on to a certain extent. Think about on more. Yeah, because everybody got to be on for a certain extent at work. Like, we get it, and nobody's trying to get fired until they get a new job at least. But there's also just the fact that think about like how much more. Think about the relief you feel when you see the other black person in the room. Like, think about the relief you feel when you just give, like, you in a neighborhood and you see a black dude and you just give the, what do y'all have, the black dude nod, that thing? Yeah. So like when you feel that release of tension, that's when you can realize, man, I was holding on to that this whole time. Yes, like my butt cheeks were like clenched this whole time. Like I did not know what that was.
Sweating.
Because it's just like
right, but it happened. But that's the angst, right? And so, like going back to my guy Lacan, psychoanalyst, is saying it's this anxiety state. It's an anxiety. There's a state of anxiety about that gaze, about this evaluation. And you know, in episodes past, I can't remember which one.
I know we have so many right now.
I know, right? It was either one or two. 50%
it was either
chance.
one or
I'll
two.
Say, I'll say two.
It's still a lot to figure out.
I think it was episode 2.
Hopefully you guys listen, so you can tell us. But yeah.
Well, it was because we were talking about stigma, and I mentioned cultural paranoia and how it's a real thing.
Yeah, like we were talking about how it's all there's a reason for all of it. Like we get it,
and how it's not pathological. It's actually a healthy, natural.
It's a protective factor as well as, and even like this also links into, I remember us talking about in the first episode how we see less clinicians, but we're also as African Americans, as black people, we more stressed out. And this is one of the reasons why. Like this is one of the reasons why where our baseline of anxiety is like, say you're supposed to be at a 0. Our baseline of anxiety or some semblance of depression is probably at a 2, and when we go through things, then it goes even higher. Right. So this is one of the reasons, just being an advocate for mental health, because you really don't realize how much tension you're holding into yourself. Why do I keep saying into? Within yourself? Words. I don't know, but you really don't know how much tension you're holding or how much you're thinking about it or how just draining it is until you leave that environment. Like it's just it's a lot. Right. And you internalize it. That's the unconscious aspect. You internalize it.
The fact that you internalize it and it's stifled and it goes unacknowledged but still continues to wear on you anyway, then it becomes like a need that's not met.
It can also be the reason why some black people have a preference for only being around black people. Which, more power to you. I don't know. I mean, it's probably more so in social settings, but it's like you can't go around the world like that. Like that's just not the world we're in. We are the minority.
Well, I think in order to like seek relief, right, I think at times it can be really important to be in spaces where you feel like you can be authentically yourself.
I agree, and I think that's one of the reasons. Like some people may just say as simple as like, oh no, I'd just rather be around my own people. But it's because when you're not with your own people, you feel a different way and you internalize that and you're uncomfortable. So you're going to go to what's most comfortable. So that's why, you may think, I just try to stay around my own people, but it's because you feel a certain way around people that don't look like you and you're internalizing that. I do think safe spaces are really, really important. Like, finding, in academia, finding a mentor that looks like you. Like, luckily, like psychology, I know they have A-B-Sci. I know they have one specifically for accounts, like a black accounting thing. I really just know specifics with psychology. For lawyers, it's BALSA. Yeah, for lawyers, it's BALSA.
Yeah. I think the idea of like finding other black folks like within your profession.
Yeah.
and finding mentors who look like you that can like help to like talk you through like some of the experiences of being in like white firms or like white
sometimes you just want to vent.
clinics.
There's not always a solution. Sometimes I just want to be like, am I crazy or was that mad racist? Like, am I like,
right.
Like,
Just to know,
did she bring fried chicken because she think I like fried chicken,
do that.
or does she like fried chicken as well? Which like everybody likes fried chicken, but you know,
right.
like it's just like, yo.
And sometimes, a lot of times in those situations, it's not about the truth. It's not. It really isn't about, because the truth in those matters like is complicated, right?
Yeah.
What that because
there's so many layers to everything. There's so many layers to us.
Right.
Keyword unconscious.
There's
Boom.
keyword unconscious.
Bam.
Boom. So the person like perpetuating the offense in those situations, like the person like there could be conscious racism or unconscious racism, right?
Yeah,
and there
you
could
got
be
your
for
own
you,
shit. Like,
and you got your own stuff, the own experiences, the other experiences that you've been through. So everything that you experience will be interpreted through that. So the truth is always complicated, but the issue is that you have to think about your skin being a factor of how people are responding and treating you, and that's the part. That's the part in which we've always been deprivileged or underprivileged, rather, is that we always have to think about that is a cognitive burden that we always have on our mind, to think about like how people may be responding to the color of my skin when there aren't people like me in the room.
Am I frowning? Have I raised my voice? And even specifically, I have a friend, and he's a black guy, and he's tall and he's dark skinned, and I remember talking to him about how he always says he has to be mindful of how he's coming off. Because one, being dark skinned, and he's tall. So he's like a bigger dark skinned black dude. He's always aware of how he is, you know, how his body is, how his face is, or how his face is. Because no matter, like, there's always probably some kind of heightened, you know, fear around him anyway. So he just has to be mindful of that. And that just sucks. Like, I couldn't help but think, man, that's exhausting.
Well, there's the actor from the Black Panther movie, right?
Which one?
I forget his name.
How dare you, sir?
I know. I'm terrible. It's Winston Duke.
Yeah.
Winston Duke, who plays M'Baku. And I think I pronounced that right.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Okay.
But I remember you were about to say he did a interview, and he said that too, right?
Yes, he came out talking about how he's always been pretty large, like muscular man, and you know, he's like, people have always responded to him with a level of like trepidation and like tension and just being like weary around him, and he really felt so validated and affirmed and loved by all of the affection he got after the movie, and even and in particular a lot of the like romantic attention he got, because he was so used to people being scared of him, and he said it really
he was used to people being scared of him, so he didn't know he was fine. Is that what he said?
I don't know if he said that.
I mean, because like that's not a thing.
Okay.
So he was, because you said the romantic attention, like he was surprised.
I think it was just really validating for him that people were responding to him with such glowing praise, because he's always felt like people were felt threatened by his presence.
And then also like the whole thing with Terry Crews.
Yeah, wow.
Because I saw just a clip of when he was talking about when he was sexually assaulted, and then I don't know who the judge was, but she said, "Why didn't you do something? Like, why?" And he was like, he was basically like, I didn't do something. And she was just like, "I need you to say it. Like, I need you to actually say it." He said, "As a black man, like looking at me and my size, I'm already a threat." He said, but he also said, like, I walk into a room, and it's not just me walking into a room; it's my family. It's everything. And if I would have done something, I would have lost everything. Mind you, he was sexually assaulted, but he can't even act out against it because it was against a white man, and he's worried that he's going to lose his career and stuff like that.
And I believe it was in a public place.
It was in a public place.
Yes, right.
Around multiple people.
Right.
Everybody told him to chill.
Right.
Which is ridiculous.
I did want to like share like some of the evidence for this stuff. You had alluded to, like earlier we were talking about, like this stuff is going to be available on our website, so please visit it. You can read all the articles there. And
our glorious black and gold website. You know what I noticed the other day? I was like, man, this look real alpha-ish.
I mean, it was,
Justin you designed the website, and I was like, I've been bamboozled. It does look amazing, though. The website is glorious.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that was not an accident.
That was an accident. I think that's just ingrained in you at this point.
It might be.
Yeah.
Honestly,
it's like black and gold everywhere.
I think it looks lovely.
Of course you do.
So anyway, there's a linguist by the name of John Bow, or Bow. It's Baugh. How do you pronounce that?
Don't ask me. I ain't look up. That sounds like ball.
John Baugh.
Boa.
So he's a linguist from
We can
Washington
spell it.
University in St. Louis, and he was the first to document something called linguistic profiling, which some minorities often face over the phone. So, and he saw this in like the 1980s. He was a black man himself, and he felt like he was being discriminated against while searching for apartments in Palo Alto, California, where he was living.
He was calling places?
Yeah. And basically, he ended up discovering that, of course, like there's racial discrimination when it comes to just the sound of your voice over the phone. And so when his white colleagues, regardless of like financial income, like his white colleagues got more callbacks from landlords than he did.
Yeah.
And so his research basically showed that there was racial discrimination just based off voice. And I think that's something that, we don't know that study, right? Like I don't think our like black parents, like every single black parent in the world has like heard this particular study. These are things that we know in feeling only that unconsciously weigh on us. This isn't just feeling, it's also just fact.
Yeah.
It's fact that we are discriminated against by just some of our more natural behaviors, whether it be the tone of our voice or how we look, even in environments where we're dressed apart and do our job the way that we're supposed to.
Yeah, I had a research advisor at my university, and I was working on one of his studies, and one of the things is you have to recruit on the phone. And I was just joining the study to help out and get some more hours. And you recruit primarily black people. And at one point he said, yeah, I think you'll do really, really well on the phone. And he said you'll probably be able to get more people too, And I said, because of what? And he said, well, you'll probably get more people. And I was like, you think they can tell I'm black on the phone? And then he kind of, it was like the verbal equivalent of just like backpedaling and like slowly backing away. But that because I was genuinely confused at first. I was like, oh, you think they can tell I'm black on the phone, so I'll get more black people. That's why.
Right.
And this is academia, guys.
Right.
So.
Right.
And I was just like.
And there's actually a movie out now. Sorry to bother you, and I have not seen it yet. But I hear it's amazing. The ratings look good.
Yeah, Lakeith Stanfield and Tessa Thompson.
Yes, if you watch Atlanta, Lakeith Stanfield, who plays Darius, he's like the one of the main characters in that in this movie. And the whole premise of the movie is basically about how the main character, as a telemarketer, he's calling people on the phone, and they hear his black voice, and he's like really struggling while he's looking at his counterparts enjoying the success of their labor.
Yeah.
And then like he like puts on this, it's supposed to be a comedy, but there's this underlying truth to this. He puts on this quite comedic and over the top white voice, and then grows like into this massive success. So I think even in the comedy, which is supposed to be, there's all this truth in it, in terms of what some of the things that we have to go through.
Yeah. So how would you say that, because I know I've shared a lot of experience, but do you have a specific experience where you've just felt uncomfortable when it comes to just being black? And if so, like, how do you combat that feeling?
Well, for me, I think it's really important for us to just know that it's a thing that we need to tend to, right? Like I don't think we're saying anything that's too novel, and I think most of our listeners will be like, yeah, like we've been there before. But you also need to tend to it. Like you don't just go to work every day feeling like you have to be a certain way in order for like people to appreciate you and value you. You have to be more quote unquote white for some people, when they hear the word white, they hear more polished, right? Which is also part of the problem. Like, if you don't have to be like you can just be you. You should be able to just be you. Mm-hmm. But I think in this country, the idea of being more professionally savvy, more of a professional in general, is about being more. It's about being more white, not about being more polished, not about being quote unquote more professional in its literal sense, but it's about being more white, like sounding more white, right?
Well, so that's like one of my chips. I don't believe in sounding white, because I don't think that's a thing. And honestly, I got told that as a kid all the time, so it's like, it really angers me. Which I think a lot of people have been told that, but I don't. Are you saying, like, I don't think it's more sounding more? When you say white, are you talking about because they're the majority and they're the ones with holding more of the power, so you need to sound more like the individuals who are higher up in the position? Or are you saying, like, you think there's actually, like, white is it? Because sometimes people think white is the apex, right? So when you say sounding more white, if the apex is education, sounding more white, sounding more educated. And I'm black and I'm educated, so me sounding professional is just me sounding professional.
Right.
So, like, what do you, like, clarify, like, the whole sounding white thing? Because that's one of the things that I think is, like, the equivalent of saying, like, oh, you speak so well, like, and that's just like one of the biggest microaggressions out there.
Like, when I think about the white gaze and its impact, it's about I think it just limits our autonomy. Because we're unconsciously mindful of it, there are these slight adjustments that we make in our day-to-day that I think eat at our ability to know, like, to feel comfortable in spaces where most other people feel comfortable, whether that be at work, coffee shop, or anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And so for me, like, when I think about the idea of like sounding more white, I think in general I'm, like, referring to the general, like, idea that we may do certain things, whether it's voice inflection, to kind of mimic how other people talk or the words that we choose. Not so much that there is a particular, like, talking white and talking black.
Oh, okay, so we should probably change the word then, right?
But yeah, maybe so. But I'm explaining it. But more so that we end up talking more, like, we end up assimilating in ways that we otherwise would not.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I feel that. That makes sense.
I think that does include voice tone, and the words that we choose in front of certain people.
Yeah, that's right. Because
I really mean, like, I do not mean, like, more professional or more polished, mm-hmm. right? But I do think that is all that when those words, like, when you talk about talking white, I think that is what's. That is what people think, right? More it's actually better. Like, that is, like, and that's the problem. Like, and the other piece that I think often that is unconscious, that is often unconscious, is that if whiteness is better, then what are you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, then what are you? Right?
I mean, that links back to the Dow study that we posted about, like, a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
About the kids. If you don't know about the study, the kids who.
Clarks.
Kenneth and Mamie Clark, which they're just amazing psychologists. But they did the study for kids in the South, and then they showed them black dolls. I actually don't remember if it was the South. Black dolls and white dolls. And the black kids would say they preferred to be the white doll because the white doll was, like, prettier, or the white doll was smarter and stuff like that. And these are black kids. They've internalized, all these things that they've basically been told as kids, that, like, white is better, and, your European features are better and stuff like that. Right. And they actually, the study was actually very, very helpful in Brown versus Board of Education, because it was justification for showing that separate is not equal. Like, we're justified, like, this is what's happening to the kids who were the children who are being reared this way.
Right.
So
that those children, right, the black children always ended up picking, like, the white doll.
They did.
And so in that study, right, these they got white children and black children, and then there were these dolls of all different shades of color, mm-hmm. and white children picked the white doll, Black children also picked
the white doll.
The white doll.
Yeah.
And the researchers had follow-up questions and asked them, like, well, why did you pick the white dog? Both white and Black children said, it's prettier, it's nicer, this is the good doll.
That was the good
child.
doll. That was one of the things. That was the thing that struck me.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the Black kids said, when they asked, well, why not this doll that's darker, that actually looked more like the child? And the child said, I mean, and these children were young.
Yeah, and they asked the children, like, which doll looks like you? And they said
the
dark
black doll.
And they said, which doll is the good doll?
They said the white doll, and then they said about the black doll, like, that's the bad one.
Yeah,
but that what one that means is that I'm bad, and then there's something wrong with me. And I think, and I think, at its crux, like, the code switching and like the little, like, changes that we have to make in order to be accepted or viewed by our white peers in favorable ways. When you find yourself in situations where there are predominantly white people, actually, at its crux, I think to some degree what it says is that, this white way of sounding, being, doing, acting, and minding oneself is way better.
Yeah, but we also want to add, like, it eats away at you.
It can eat away at you.
It can eat away at you. Like, it just really does. And it took me a while to get older and just be like, I'm just going to be how I am. But that takes a lot to realize to be that way. And I think it's also one of the reasons why representation matters.
Right.
It's also, that's why it's why Dr. Hopkins was like, we got onto this episode, because I was just so frustrated with the fact that there were so few minority clinicians. It's such a missed opportunity, and representation matters. Like, I deal with children and families. You're dealing with children and families. They're already there for something has gone wrong. Like, you see a psychologist most of the time with children when there's a concern. Right. And that's an issue. And, like, just the missed opportunity of not having representation, like, of just even male clinicians. There aren't that many male clinicians. Or having representation of a black clinician at Johns Hopkins and Baltimore, Maryland, where, come on.
Right.
It was just, I mean, that was like so it's one of the reasons why representation matters. It was one of the reasons why we really thought it was a good idea to do the show, because this will just show, like, everyone, like you said, this is all stuff that you guys have heard before. Like, this is all stuff that you felt. But, like, doesn't it feel better to know that, like, yeah, no, we all feel this. This is not, this is everywhere.
Well, that's the part that I think is too often, like, underestimated, like, how powerful that is, right? The validation that comes from, yes, I've experienced this too. No, you're not crazy. Actually, it is hard when you're a black person. You said the C word.
Did we? Oh, I said the C word too. That's the new C word, guys. You said it, but I think I said it too. But yeah.
but in this context, right? It makes sense because there have been times, when you've experienced it for the first time, right? When you experience it for the first time, being in a predominantly white space and being the only one, like, it feels like you're losing your mind a little bit.
Yeah.
It can be really.
I never know what I'm reading too much into or what I'm not. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's not reading too much into it, because if that's how you felt from it, then that's what matters. Like, if I felt attacked by that, if I felt like,
yes,
like,
right.
that's how I feel. Feelings are not right or wrong. So
right.
if you feel like you were singled out in that aspect, that's what matters.
Not
like,
only
that's
feelings,
not what I meant, but that's what I felt.
Not only are feelings not right or wrong, we don't choose them.
Nope.
We don't. You really don't.
You choose how you react to them.
You can
that's
choose
always
how you
like
react.
I always talk to patients. You choose how you react to them.
You cannot choose what you feel or not. Feeling is both psychological. It's also biological. It's that mind-body connection.
That visceral response you get when you feel like something is about to, like, go wrong, or you feel like someone says something to you crazy.
Right. And
darn it, I said it again. My bad.
but I also think, and right, like, one of the choices that we have when it comes to, like, dealing with our feelings is that we can choose to ignore them. We can choose to pretend like we don't feel anything, right? That happens too.
That's hard though, but that's hard for me.
Right? We can choose that. We can make that choice, or that can be like a natural defense mechanism. But that doesn't mean the emotion doesn't have an effect.
It festers.
It will still affect you. And so that's why I think it's so important to talk about these, like, unconscious aspects, because I do think there are ways in which we naturally kind of, which everyone to a degree naturally dilutes parts of their experiences so it doesn't feel as bad or feel to avoid, like, something that's uncomfortable. But when you don't deal with it, it continues to build. Like, if you're working that job, I mean, we've seen stories like this before. Like I've heard people say, like, you're working this job, right, and things are okay. Like it seems like the company is, and what I mean by okay is that people are not like outwardly racist and dehumanizing you with terrible remarks.
Yeah, because okay, I mean, it's really just like, I mean, I'm sure they say racist jokes, but they don't say it around me, so I don't stay here.
Maybe
that's okay.
Depending on where you are, right?
I'm getting paid every 2 weeks.
Right. But then all of a sudden, like the longer you're there, then if you have like black colleagues on the job with you, all of a sudden like they try to like move the needle a little bit more, right? Mm-hmm. Let's not just like have this diversity conversation that's really antiquated and outdated and also unhelpful. Let's actually process some of the issues that are happening, right? Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, there are other white colleagues who are upset and bothered. And then that person, and then there's tension, it rises, and then that black colleague ends up leaving. And so there's the attrition for black folks in these spaces that I think ends up, sometimes for a lot of different jobs, ends up happening as well, because there will always be a desire for every human to be able to feel comfortable in their surroundings and to feel like they can be okay and they're safe, right? Yeah. And if you're trying to like create a space like that in a space that doesn't naturally have that, there's always tension. And for us, there's always that question of whether do we try to make this space a little bit safer for us, or do we just collect this check and go home? And either way, whatever we decide, the decision isn't so much what matters, but the psychological process and the stress that you deal with trying to make the decision, and how you like, and your experience of it as you're going through it, that's what matters so much. And that's what we really want people to kind of pick up.
Yeah, I always feel like work is one aspect of your life, but I'm an avid believer that I wasn't born just to work and pay bills. Mm-hmm. So if you can't find that space in work, I try to find it other places. Like luckily, you're able to find friends everywhere. I feel like we need to have an episode on, because I remember asking you like, how do black guys, like, how do men make friends? Because I for real would just be like, oh, I like your hair. Let's hang out. Or, oh, girl, that high puff is amazing. Let's hang out. Or, I like your pants. Or just like, I like your face. You're slaying it. Like your makeup's amazing. But like men, I don't know how they, make friends when it comes to that. And that can be difficult. Like when it comes to, you need a safe space and you want to hang out with friends, and you might be new to an area. And like, because guys, you're not really going to be like, hey, you want to watch the game together, So I do think it's more difficult for men. Yeah. Because women, I don't think there's anything weird with just being like, hey man, you just want to just get a drink. But men, I do think it's harder for men in that sense.
Well, this is something Raquel and I are so like itching to talk about. I think it will be a multi-part, multi-episode conversation about like masculinity and femininity within the black community. And obviously, it's a scale, like in every culture, for every person, within every person, right? Like there's like, people can identify as more or less masculine, more or less feminine, and there are also people who would say like both of those terms are antiquated anyway, because obviously both men and women can display different types of traits, right?
That's me.
Yeah.
I think those terms, I don't think those terms are a thing. I think everything's a spectrum at this point.
Maternal and paternal as well, right? Like there's...
Yeah, because I don't believe in the roles. Like those are sociocultural. Right. Those are...
Obviously, a father can be maternal and a mother can be paternal, like whatever you assign those words to mean. But in any case, like we definitely want to. But I do think, to your point, like I do think black masculinity in particular is incredibly rigid. For most black men, and so that puts an additional barrier into kind of self-care that you need when you're dealing with these kind of things.
I will say I just Googled Black people meetups. Now, not to be confused with Black people meet, because that's like a dating site, I think. But Black people meetups, and it's a website. Meetup is a website anyway, and you can meet up with people just for friend stuff to do certain things. Like you can meet because you have professional hobbies that you're interested in, or watch basketball and stuff like that. But I specifically Googled Black people meetups, and they're all over the country. And you can just like hang out with people. If your safe spaces, because my safe space is more of a social aspect. Some people's safe space is really just being able to like go home and calm down and stuff like that. But I do think a lot of the times that it's really good to vent about some things, like to just be talking about some stuff, there's not always a solution. There is always a solution, but there's not always a solution that's feasible to you or that you're going to be able to do. And you can't just say, I'm going to quit this job. No, you need this check. We got bills, you know?
Right.
So I think that's something that people can look up. Yeah. Black people meet up, not black people. I mean, you may be wanting to date. I don't know. So you can do black people meet too, but like black people meet up. That's really, really cool.
Right. So to piggyback off that, and you did ask me like what should people do, right? And we always want to get to that. Like what should people do to deal with this? I think step one is acknowledging, like we talked about that. Like not only just acknowledging, for you, like that it can be stressful to be in those spaces, but also being mindful of how you feel about yourself, like your own self-concept and your own thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and that can change when you're in those spaces for a longer period of time. And so for me, I think, and you mentioned this too, like you've said safe space. I do have issues with that word.
You have issues with safe space?
I do.
Darn
yeah.
It.
Why? I don't think there's anywhere safe for us. Right, because you even said this, right?
That's so sad.
I know it's so morbid, but I also think it's true, right? It's not.
Well, that makes. I mean, yeah.
You can't.
Half of our realities are morbid, right? That sucks,
quote,
Justin. We were in on a positive note, man.
Listen, I tell it like I feel it.
Well, oh my God.
But like you said, right? I don't like.
No, you're right. I can't disagree with that. You're right. You're absolutely right.
And I think that's also an unconscious truth that we end up living with. Right? Like,
it can't be. It doesn't matter. It used to be like, you're safe at school. Nah. You safe at home. Nah. You're not safe in your backyard. No. You're not. I mean, you're right.
But I think in particular,
I don't want to live in fear, though.
Right? Of course not. Like, right? Of course not. Of course not. But I think we often do because of that, because we're in touch with that reality more often, like and more times than not. Because I think we're aware of that reality more than our counterparts ever have to be.
Yeah, I'm not going to live in fear, but I'm also not going to be stupid.
Right.
Like I'm not going to not be aware of my environment, where I am.
Yeah.
I can probably spot a police officer a mile away, and I'm never doing anything wrong, but I get so uncomfortable
looking in the mirror.
Yeah, it's just like
when you drive, always checking your rearview mirror. Your heart dropping whenever the cops are behind you. Right?
My heart drops every time I see someone pulled over and they're black.
Yeah, like
I have a genuine fear that I'm going to see them on the news. Like 20 minutes later.
Yeah.
Like that, it makes me uncomfortable. And I honestly, if I see the person pulled over and they're not black, I feel relief. I'm like, okay, you'll make it home safe. That's what's up.
Right.
Which is awful.
Right. But you shouldn't have to think about it that way, but of course you do.
I'm also really hyper vigilant about that stuff anyway, though. So that's just me.
Right. Yeah, it's you because there's a reason why it's you.
There's
right?
always a reason.
There's always, but the reason's important, and I think part of it is because you're a black woman living in a world where white people tend to brutalize black people. So not to make it completely morbid, because I think it's and you did say earlier, right? Like our weapon is our skin, right?
We can't drop it,
right,
it's
right.
That whenever the whole you see the stuff and they say drop your weapon.
Right. It's our weapon is our skin. It's our physical features. It's our essence.
It's the stereotypes that certain people hold in their minds about us. It's in them too. So when you drop yours first. Like you dropped your bigotry, you drop your systematic racism, and you drop all of the stereotypes you hold. You first.
Yeah, right.
It makes no sense.
Right.
But yeah.
But I do think so. Going back to what do you do? What do you do? Like how do you find some semblance of safety and comfort? And I think that resource is really great. Like black people. What is it? Black Meetup.
I just Googled black people meetup. But meetup.com is just a website anyway.
Okay. Black people meetup.
And it's everywhere, so that's cool.
I think it's finding friends who you can genuinely lower your guard with.
Yeah, because you just can't be. It's uncomfortable to be like that all the time. I get a sense of relief when I walk home because I'm home, but I also get a sense of relief because I just more normal, or even just going to your car and just being able to chill, or being able to be on the bus or the train or the L or whatever, and putting your headphones and being able to chill. Just that. Mm-hmm. Also, a lot of stuff can be, you can't really control your environment, but there's stuff you can do like working out. also helps. And I'm not, everyone has their levels. Some people do CrossFit, some people do bulking, some people, you'll be surprised how much like a 15-minute walk will chill you out.
Yes. Yeah.
And like for real,
yes.
Like if you think about how many people don't really walk around, like if you have desk jobs, think about how much you really just wake up, shower, go sit at your desk, come home, go sit on the couch, like you just walking around. And we're also technically supposed to get at least 30 minutes of sun a day, guys. I really think there might be research on it. I really think Black people need more sun just because we were stolen from an area that had more sun. So I really actually think like we need more of the, because the sun rays are healing and stuff like that. But
I think they like the general idea of like finding some solace, like some space, some space where you feel like you can just relax. And I think things like going for a walk, like playing music, just again, like zoning out, watching like TV, like that stuff helps. But I think it's also useful to like talk it through, like to hear other people say like, wow, I've experienced that too. Wow, actually you're not alone in this. Wow, you're like what you're experiencing, I feel all the time just as well.
Or even what you said before, like how you said, what'd you say about just when you're reaching, and I think nothing's going to be better than like knowing yourself, but how do you know when you're getting more and more drained from being in that environment?
Right.
Like how do you know?
Right.
When it's starting to get too much for you, like it may not be by Monday, it may not be Tuesday, but maybe by like Wednesday. Just being more mindful of how your body is when it's normal versus like how you're dealing with this.
Right, and we had even there are like personality changes that can happen, or we had mentioned like muscle tension, like there are different things like that happen, but we have to be able to like take a pause, like assess like how we're doing with this. I would encourage every Black person to every person of color when they start a new job or when they enter new environments that they're going to be in for a while, after they've been there for a couple of days to like a week, take a moment, stop, think about, write some of the pros and cons about the job, like in terms of the social dynamics that you're experiencing with some of your colleagues and superiors, or in some of your subordinates. So like take the time and be intentional about checking in with yourself and saying, self, like how is it? Like do I feel like I'm going to be like safe at this job? Like do I feel like people are going to respect me? Do I feel like people are going to like treat me in ways that I want to be treated? Do I feel like people are going to view me the way that I'd like to be viewed? And to do that periodically as they work the job, whether it's like 3 months like after you've just started. Like I think checking in like really soon, like a week after you started, would be great. But then to check in again like a few weeks later, and maybe like a year, each year that goes by, like just to check in with yourself, like how am I feeling in my Black skin in this particular environment?
Yeah, and just knowing that like there are many people who feel this way. I feel this way. I got told the other day I got like a rich person's job. Well, this, first of all, I don't, and second of all, like I still feel this way. This does not stop any. The feeling doesn't stop from any certain walk of life. The feeling doesn't stop in any certain level of education. The feeling doesn't stop when you're living in a certain area. This is it. Like we're born this way, and this is unfortunately the way it is. So we kind of got to figure out how we're going to maneuver it. It's
the burden of Blackness, but I think I also think that that being a person of color is a privilege in so many ways too.
Yeah, it's really, I think so.
To do the kind of work that we do, and to speak to the kind of issues that we do, and to have the kind of insight that we have about the issues that we do, only come from living those experiences. And I think there's the harshness of our reality is true, but so is hope. Hope is also true. Joy is also true as well.
Yeah, it's also kind of where half the time, like I make a million jokes, but it's because I've seen some like messed up stuff, and it's kind of like it's terrible, but you got to laugh to stop from crying, man. Like, oh, let's just tiki torches. Let's laugh about that racism. Like it's part of the aspect of resilience. But I do always say resilience runs out, because it does. So don't think you're just gonna have resilience forever. But I think it's something that we as a people do. Like, you just be like, yeah, man, that's crazy. And then just flip it into like a joke, because like we can't really ruminate on it.
I think that's another thing that helps. Like the humor. Like humor does help. Yeah. But I always do say though, like if humor is your only option, like,
oh yeah.
I think also and I think you can fall in trouble because
I've gotten in trouble multiple times for inappropriate jokes. Like, my timing. First of all, my timing is always amazing, but some people just don't. But no, I don't got in trouble. Like, most of my jokes are inappropriate. I'm loud.
But like we can laugh about it, but we also have to process.
Yeah, you got to process.
So let's do our brief recap. I mean, like we talked about like black tokenism, like what it's like being a black person in like an all predominantly white space. We talked about the white gaze, what that is, how gaze not only impacts behavior because there's this evaluative perspective, and that black people, black bodies are more harshly gauged and more harshly evaluated than our white peers. That is not just black folklore, that is also scientific fact.
We give y'all science every episode. Like, there's facts behind all this.
Right. I mean, things that we didn't get to discuss were just, I mean, that science extends to all sorts of different like areas of just being. I mean, including the sports industry. We know like black quarterbacks are benched 2 to 2.5 times more often than their white counterparts. Even like controlling for performance, and what we mean by controlling in research is like that, like even
across the board.
Yeah, across the board. Like regardless of performance, black quarterbacks are. So these are like scientific facts. I'll share that article as well. Then we got into just like what do you do like. Oh, that's what I was saying. Like, it not only just impacts behavior, the evaluative part, but it also limits like the kind of things that you can do. I think it often limits autonomy in ways that our white counterparts don't have to deal with, and it can also lead to like poor self-esteem at times if the standard is more white, and you have to. And so, the things that we came up with to help deal with that are just finding spaces where you can be. You can be you can just be your black self.
That can be when you're by yourself. That can be when you're around friends. That can be like you're just taking a 10 to 15 minute walk, and even just watching or seeing so many people that do look like you and that are doing well, or even just hearing us honestly say, I feel like it's going to get real like psychologically, but you matter.
Yes,
you're awesome.
What you feel matters.
What you feel matters. Like, feeling's not right or wrong. Like, what you feel matters, and like you're finding someone that hears you. I mean, every single episode is going to end with us saying like, also locate your nearest clinician if this feels like it's getting overwhelming as well. But like, I understand, I get it. Like, I'm I love this internship. I think it's amazing. There's so many different resources. However, when I walked into that room and there were like no one who looked like me, I was just so disappointed. And I'm still going to love my job, and I'm still going to get to work with patients, and Johns Hopkins is still an amazing hospital, but it does suck. Like,
it's just too often we find ourselves in these spaces where white perception, it feels like it determines our success, our latitude, what we can and cannot do, how we feel, how we think. And it can weigh on us in ways that we just really are not completely aware of. And so I think it's important to do the evaluative process that you did, or just thinking about, and using this podcast as an opportunity to talk it through, to realize like, wow, like this is like really bothering me, and I want to find a space to both to educate folks, to talk about my own experience. I mean, that's
especially at work. I go straight to any job I have, and this is just always the case. I go straight to the admin staff or the HR office, because they're always black and they always match up. Like, that's exactly where I go. Like, I always know the admin staff by heart, and I always know, honestly, because when I used to buy food, I always knew the kitchen staff by heart. Like, that's that's just where I just got to find them. I always just got to, I do have to find them. I just like have to find my people. It's just the way it is. It's just be like, hey, how you doing, girl? Like, what's up? Yeah, that's great. And then, I'm about to go see this patient, girl. Yeah, so I'll see you later. But, it just makes me feel more comfortable. And without fail, every single job I've been at, admin and HR.
Right.
That's where we at. Like, and it's crazy to me, but like, I can count the number of Black mentors or Black clinicians psychologists in the field that I've seen that I've had the opportunity to actually be in a position where I was working with them. Like I saw them every day, not like projects on one hand. Right. Like it's crazy. Right. But you guys are awesome.
Thanks so much
for listening. Yes. We got like we released the 2 episodes on Thursday, and we got like so many
Thursday, July 5th was our debut.
Yeah.
We appreciate everyone who took the time to rate and review.
Yes.
It helps us grow so much when you do and I think the main place where you can do that is on iTunes. Is that right,
iTunes
Raquel?
is actually, so I'm not sure, you can't really rate or review on any place but iTunes.
Okay.
So you can click the stars and hit rate, but you can also write us a review too, which is amazing. Normally, if you go to our Instagram page, it's just our website. So you just click the link and you just scroll down to the bottom. You can write a review. We already got some amazing reviews, so really appreciate it. And it really helps us to know, what we're doing right or what we're doing wrong. If you, have any concerns with that, you can also check out our website. I know I made a joke about it, but our website looks awesome. Justin did it by himself. It looks so good. There's animations on that, like words come at you. Like I was looking at this and I was just like, man, this is amazing. So like you go to our website, like it's awesome. Like
thanks, Raquel.
We always because I can't do it. So like I don't know how I was like amazed that like you really made this from scratch, but like everything's up there.
And please do visit our Ask Us page where you can in future episodes we really would like to do a segment where we're interacting with our listeners, responding to some of the questions that you have, and problem solving together. Problems are complex. There's never one way to solve a problem, and so we're happy to talk through the complexities of it. I mean, the intricacies of it, rather. If you share with us,
and if you want to, if you have any ideas of topics for episodes. Because I feel like we can go on for days on topics for episodes, and we probably got to work on our brevity, but because we're both bad at it, we need a third person to be like, shut up, we get it. But it's because there's so much to say about it. Like with everything, there's so many levels.
There's so many
to
layers.
It. Yeah. But yeah, if you guys want to, there's a page. What does it say? Ask Us, right?
Ask Us. It just says Ask Us.
Yeah.
It's the last option on the menu. You'll see it. Can't miss it.
Yeah, so www.theblackunconscious.com. We're also on Instagram. We have a Facebook page.
The Black Unconscious on Instagram, The Black Unconscious on Facebook. Mm-hmm. I think that's it. Oh, the last thing we'll just say is when you want to find us on different podcast hosts, just make sure that you're searching and putting the parentheses around un.
Yes, because the parentheses is always there.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's it.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate it. We got a really good outpour of reviews and everyone's saying they like it. So just subscribe, and we will be releasing. We'll be releasing episodes every Thursday.
Right.
So every Thursday the episodes will come out, and
we'll see you guys next week.
Yes, thank you.